My twin sister used my name to steal my boyfriend, my future, and my identity. 7 years later, she showed up at my door begging for the one thing only I possessed. My name is Elena Porter. I am a twin. Or rather, I am the other twin. The one who arrived 2 minutes late and spent a lifetime being treated like an afterthought. We were born with the same face, the same DNA, the same potential. But somewhere along the way, the world decided that Sienna was the sun and I was merely her shadow. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how I stopped chasing a light that was never mine, how I built something from nothing while everyone looked the other way, and how my sister, the golden child, the favorite, the thief of everything I held dear, came crawling back when her borrowed shine finally burned out. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever been compared to someone until you forgot who you were, leave a like right now, comment where you are watching from, and subscribe, because this story, you need to hear how it ends. Everything started in a small house in Tacoma, Washington, where the rain never stopped, and neither did the favoritism. I grew up in a small house in Tacoma, Washington, the kind of house where the walls were thin enough to hear every whispered conversation, every sigh of disappointment, every comparison that shaped who I would become. The air always smelled like weak coffee and rain-soaked newspapers. My mother, Claire, worked night shifts as a nurse at St. Joseph Medical Center. My father, Howard, was a retired sailor with tired eyes and a habit of saying things that cut deeper than he realized. One phrase he repeated constantly still echoes in my mind. Identical twins should not compete, he would say. They should reflect. He always said this while looking at me. Never at Sienna. Sienna was born 2 minutes before me. Just 2 minutes. But she lived her entire life as if she had arrived hours, years, worlds ahead. If I was silence, she was noise. If I was effort, she was spectacle. If I was the question, she was always the answer everyone wanted to hear. My earliest memory of being less than her happened when we were 5 years old. Our grandmother Lydia, my mother's mother, had come to visit from Oregon. She was a retired weaver with gentle hands and the kind of wisdom that only comes from watching life unfold without judgment. She brought us matching dolls that day, handmade with fabric scraps from her old projects. I remember holding mine carefully, examining every stitch, every color, every imperfection that made it unique. Sienna tossed hers aside within minutes and asked for candy instead. My mother laughed and said, "That is Sienna for you, always wanting more." Then she looked at me and added, "Elena is the careful one. She does not need much." I was 5 years old, and I had already been assigned my role. The one who does not need much, the one who is careful, the one who fades into the background while her sister demands the spotlight. As we grew older, the pattern became more defined. Sienna joined cheerleading and became captain by sophomore year. I joined the debate team and won regional competitions, but no one came to watch. Sienna was crowned prom queen twice. I spent prom night at home finishing a group project that 3 other people had abandoned. The worst part was not the favoritism itself. It was how invisible it was to everyone except me. My parents did not wake up one morning and decide to love her more. It happened in small moments, tiny decisions, invisible preferences that accumulated like snow until I was buried beneath them. When Sienna needed a car for college, my father took out a loan. When I asked about one, he said I was more practical and would figure out public transportation. When Sienna failed a class, my mother hired a tutor. When I struggled in chemistry, my mother said I was smart enough to figure it out on my own. I remember one Thanksgiving when I was 16. My cousin Aaron, who lived in Portland and rarely visited, was there. He was quiet, observant, the kind of person who noticed things others missed. After dinner, while Sienna entertained the adults with stories about her social life, Aaron found me in the kitchen doing dishes alone. "Why do you let them treat you like that?" he asked. "Like what?" I replied, scrubbing a pot harder than necessary. "Like you are invisible." I did not answer. I did not know how to explain that invisibility was not something I chose. It was something that was chosen for me, over and over, until I started to believe I deserved it. The question that haunted me throughout my childhood was simple but devastating. If we were identical, if we shared the same genes, the same face, the same beginning, why was she the one everyone saw? What was wrong with me that made me so easy to overlook? I searched for answers in mirrors, in grades, in achievements. I thought maybe if I worked harder, performed better, gave more, they would finally see me. But the harder I tried, the more I faded. My efforts were expected. Hers were celebrated. By the time I was 18, I had stopped asking why. I had accepted that some people are born to be seen, and others are born to watch. I did not know yet that this acceptance was the first wound that would nearly destroy me. I did not know that the worst was still coming, that Sienna would not be content with being the favorite, that she would reach into my life and take the very things that made me feel like I existed at all. But before I tell you about the theft that broke me, you need to understand something. I did not hate my sister, not then. I loved her with the desperate, confused love of someone who keeps hoping that this time, things will be different. This time, she will see me as an equal. This time, she will choose loyalty over competition. I was wrong, and that wrongness would cost me everything I thought I had. What happened next changed my life forever. Because when you are 19 years old and your twin sister steals your name, your opportunity, and your future with a smile on her face, you learn something brutal about the world. Some people do not want to share the light. They want to be the only one shining, even if it means extinguishing you completely. The first real theft happened when I was 19 years old. There was a competitive exchange program to study sustainable business practices in Copenhagen. The application required a personal essay, academic transcripts, and letters of recommendation. I spent 3 months perfecting my submission. I wrote and rewrote that essay until every word felt like a piece of my soul on paper. I talked about growing up watching my mother work double shifts, about learning the value of systems and efficiency, about wanting to create solutions that helped people who worked hard but never seemed to get ahead. It was the most honest thing I had ever written. Sienna knew about the program because I made the mistake of being excited around her. I told her about it at dinner one night, my voice trembling with hope. She smiled and said, "That sounds perfect for you, Elena. I knew you would find your thing eventually." I should have recognized that smile. I had seen it before, right before she borrowed my favorite sweater and returned it stained. Right before she copied my art project in 7th grade and got a higher grade because hers was more colorful. Right before she flirted with the boy I liked at summer camp just to prove she could. The acceptance letter arrived 6 weeks later. Except it was not addressed to me, it was addressed to Sienna Porter. I found out because my mother called me into the living room with tears of joy in her eyes. She said, "Sienna got into that program you were talking about. Is that not wonderful? She must have applied too and did not tell us." My hands went cold. My vision blurred at the edges. I asked to see the acceptance letter, and there it was. My essay, my words, my application, with her name typed at the top. She had logged into my email, copied my submission, changed the name, and submitted it as her own. The program only accepted 1 student per application pool, and they had chosen the version with Sienna's name on it. My version was marked as a duplicate and discarded. When I confronted her, she laughed. She actually laughed. "Elena," she said, "you were never going to go anyway. You would have gotten scared and backed out. I did you a favor. Now you do not have to deal with the pressure." I turned to my parents expecting outrage, expecting justice, expecting them to see finally what she had done. My father sighed and said, "Girls, you need to learn to share." My mother added, "It is just a program. There will be others. Besides, Sienna has been stressed lately. She needed this win. She needed this win." Those 4 words destroyed something inside me that I did not know could break. Sienna flew to Copenhagen 3 months later. She posted photos on social media with captions about finding herself and growing through new experiences. She was living my dream, wearing my words, inhabiting a future that was supposed to be mine. I stayed home and enrolled in the local community college, telling myself it was temporary, telling myself I would find another way, telling myself that if I just worked harder, proved myself more, eventually someone would see me. The next 2 years blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and determination. I transferred to the University of Washington in Seattle for my junior year, studying marketing and communications. I worked 2 jobs to pay my tuition while Sienna's was covered entirely by our parents. I told myself it was fair because she was going to a more expensive school. I told myself a lot of things to survive. Then I met Michael Reyes. He was 22, studying environmental engineering, with kind eyes and a smile that asked for nothing in return. We met in the campus library during finals week. I was surrounded by textbooks and empty coffee cups. He sat across from me and asked if I was okay. No one had asked me that in years. Not genuinely. Not like they actually wanted to know the answer. We started talking. Then we started studying together. Then we started dating. For the first time in my life, someone chose me. Not because I was convenient or useful or the safe option. He chose me because he saw something in me worth choosing. Those 8 months with Michael were the happiest I had ever been. He made me feel visible in a way I had never experienced. He remembered small things I mentioned in passing. He defended me when others interrupted. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room, even when Sienna was there. Especially when Sienna was there. Because of course Sienna came around. She transferred back to Seattle for her senior year, claiming she missed family. She started showing up at dinners I had with Michael, at study sessions, at coffee shops where she knew we would be. She complimented me constantly at first. Elena, he is perfect for you. Elena, you two are so cute together. Elena, I am so happy you finally found someone. But I noticed things. The way she touched his arm when she talked. The way she laughed at his jokes louder than necessary. The way she asked him questions about his childhood, his dreams, his fears. The way she listened like every word he said was precious. I told myself I was being paranoid, that she was just being friendly, that sisters were supposed to get along with each other's partners. I wanted so badly to believe that she had changed, that Copenhagen had given her perspective, that she finally saw me as an equal, not a competitor. 3 months before graduation, I found the messages. I was using Michael's laptop to print an assignment when a notification popped up. It was from Sienna. The message preview showed enough to make my heart stop. I feel like I can tell you things I cannot tell anyone else. You understand me in a way she never does. My hands shook as I opened the conversation. Weeks of messages. Months of emotional intimacy that should have been mine. He never touched her physically, at least not in writing. But what I read was worse than physical betrayal. He told her about his childhood trauma. The same stories he had told me first, now retold as if they were new. She comforted him with phrases she had heard me use. He said she was easier to talk to, less intense, more fun. I felt like I was reading my own erasure in real time. When I confronted Michael, he did not deny it. He said it just happened. He said he did not mean for it to go that far. He said Sienna understood parts of him that I could not. When I confronted Sienna, she tilted her head and smiled. Elena, she said, we are twins. We share everything. Is this really such a big deal? 2 months later, they made it official. My parents congratulated them. My father said Michael was a nice young man. My mother said it was good that Sienna was finally settling down. No one asked if I was okay. No one seemed to remember he had been mine first. I graduated alone, walked across the stage alone, and moved out of Seattle within 2 weeks. I was 21 years old, and I had lost my identity, my future, and my first love to the same person. But something else happened during those final days in Seattle. Something that would change everything. I stopped crying. I stopped explaining. I stopped waiting for someone to see the injustice and make it right. I decided that if no one was going to choose me, I would choose myself. I would build something so solid, so undeniably mine, that no one could ever take it away. I did not know it then, but that decision was the beginning of everything. I moved to Denver, Colorado with 2 suitcases, $1,800, and a determination that felt more like desperation than hope. I chose Denver because it was far enough from Tacoma that I could breathe, but not so far that I would feel like I was running away. I told myself it was a strategic relocation. In truth, I was fleeing the wreckage of everything I thought my life would be. The first year was brutal. I found a studio apartment in a building that smelled like cigarette smoke and broken dreams. The carpet was stained, the heating worked intermittently, and my neighbors fought loudly enough that I learned their arguments by heart. But it was mine. No one else's name was on the lease. No one else could take it from me. I worked 3 jobs to survive. Mornings, I was a barista at a coffee shop downtown where the tips were inconsistent and the customers were often cruel. Afternoons, I took freelance editing gigs, fixing grammar and restructuring sentences for people who could not be bothered to do it themselves. Evenings, I organized spreadsheets and databases for small businesses that needed help but could not afford real consultants. I ate ramen and canned soup. I walked to save bus fare. I went months without buying anything that was not absolutely essential. Some nights, I was so tired that I fell asleep fully clothed on top of my bed, too exhausted to even pull back the covers. But the physical exhaustion was manageable. What nearly destroyed me was the psychological weight. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw her face. Every time someone complimented my appearance, I wondered if they were really seeing me or just a reflection of my sister. Every time I opened social media and saw photos of Sienna and Michael together, smiling, traveling, living the life that should have been mine, something inside me cracked a little more. I started having nightmares, not dramatic ones with monsters or falling. Worse, I dreamed of family dinners where I was invisible, where I spoke and no one heard, where I reached for plates of food that always moved just out of reach. I dreamed of being replaced, erased, forgotten. I woke up from those dreams more tired than when I fell asleep. 6 months after moving to Denver, I hit rock bottom. It was February, and the heating in my apartment had failed again. I was wrapped in 3 blankets, eating cold cereal because I could not afford to turn on the stove when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. Sienna and Michael are getting engaged. We are so happy. Call when you can to congratulate them. I did not cry. I was past crying. Instead, I felt something worse. I felt nothing. Complete emptiness. As if the last remaining part of me that still hoped, still believed things might get better, had finally died. I sat in that cold apartment for hours, staring at the wall, trying to remember why I was fighting so hard to survive. What was the point? Everything I built, she would take. Everything I loved, she would claim. Everything I achieved, she would overshadow. I was the spare, the backup, the less important version. Maybe I was supposed to accept that. Maybe fighting it was the real problem. That night, I wrote a list of reasons to keep going. I could only think of 3. My grandmother Lydia, my stubborn refusal to prove them right, and a small flickering hope that someday, somehow, things would be different. The next morning, I called my grandmother. I had not spoken to her in months. I was ashamed of my circumstances, ashamed of my failure, ashamed of being the twin who had nothing while Sienna had everything. Lydia answered on the second ring. "Elena," she said, as if she had been waiting, "I was wondering when you would call." I broke down. For the first time since leaving Seattle, I let myself cry. Really cry. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and wounded and tired of pretending. She listened. She did not interrupt, did not offer solutions, did not tell me to be grateful for what I had. She just listened. When I finally stopped, when the tears dried and my breathing steadied, she said something I will never forget. "Elena, your sister lives in borrowed light. She takes from others because she has nothing of her own to give. But you, my girl, you have roots. Deep ones. Roots that no one can steal because they grew from your own pain." I asked her what I was supposed to do with roots when I had nothing else. She laughed softly. "You plant them," she said. "You plant them somewhere new and you grow something that is entirely yours." That conversation was the turning point. I did not suddenly become successful or happy or healed. Recovery does not work like that. But something shifted inside me. I stopped asking why I was not enough for my family. I started asking what I could build for myself. I noticed something during my freelance work. Every small business I helped had the same problems. They struggled with scheduling, inventory, payments, and tracking their progress. They needed systems, but the existing software was either too expensive or too complicated for their needs. I started sketching ideas in a notebook during my breaks at the coffee shop. Simple solutions, intuitive interfaces, tools that would help people who worked hard but never seemed to get ahead. The irony was not lost on me. I was designing the exact system I wished someone had designed for me. I named the concept clarity flow. It sounded like what I wanted my life to become. Clear, moving forward, no longer stuck in the chaos of being someone's shadow. I taught myself to code using free online resources. I spent every spare moment building, testing, failing, rebuilding. I made mistakes, so many mistakes. I launched a beta version that crashed within hours. I pitched to investors who laughed at me. I was rejected so many times that rejection started to feel like feedback rather than failure. But I did not stop. I could not stop. Because for the first time in my life, I was building something that no one could take from me. Not my parents, not Michael, not Sienna. Clarity Flow was mine. 3 years into development, I got my first paying customer, a bakery owner in Aurora who said my platform saved her 10 hours a week. She paid me $50 a month and told everyone she knew. That $50 meant more than any amount my parents had ever spent on Sienna. Because I had earned it. Every single penny. 4 years in, I got my first investor. A small angel fund that believed in practical solutions for overlooked markets. They gave me enough to hire 2 developers and quit my barista job. 6 years in, Clarity Flow had over 5,000 users and was growing every month. We were featured in a local business magazine, then a national one, then a podcast about women entrepreneurs. 7 years after moving to Denver with nothing, I was running a company that employed 23 people and served small businesses across the country. I was 28 years old, and I had become someone impossible to ignore. But the past was not done with me yet. Because right when I thought I had finally escaped, right when I thought I had built walls high enough to protect me, Sienna came back. And she wanted everything I had. The message arrived on a Tuesday evening in September. I was in my office, the one I had designed myself with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown Denver. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and amber, and I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Elena, it is Sienna. I need to talk to you. Please. I stared at those words for a long time. Years of therapy had taught me to pause before reacting, to examine my feelings before letting them control me. So I paused. I examined. What I felt was not anger. Not exactly. It was something closer to exhaustion mixed with morbid curiosity. After 7 years of minimal contact, after watching from a distance as the life she stole from me unraveled piece by piece, I wondered what could possibly be urgent enough to reach out now. Over those 7 years, information about Sienna had filtered to me through various channels. My cousin Aaron, who had always been more observant than anyone gave him credit for, sent occasional updates. My grandmother mentioned things in passing during our monthly phone calls. Social media, before I blocked everyone from my old life, had provided glimpses. The engagement to Michael lasted 2 years before falling apart. Apparently, emotional intimacy built on manipulation does not translate into a stable foundation. He left her for someone else. Someone who was not a twin of his ex-girlfriend. Someone who probably did not come with the psychological complications of our particular dynamic. After Michael, there was a string of relationships that followed a pattern. Intense beginnings, dramatic middles, bitter endings. Sienna seemed incapable of sustaining anything that required consistency or sacrifice. Her career trajectory was equally unstable. She jumped from marketing to event planning to influencer attempts to a failed boutique business. Each venture began with enthusiasm and ended with excuses. The economy was bad. Her partners were incompetent. The timing was wrong. Nothing was ever her fault. Meanwhile, our parents aged and struggled. My father developed cardiovascular problems, the result of years of stress and poor diet and the physical toll of his earlier Navy service. My mother reduced her hours at the hospital to care for him. Their savings dwindled. The house I grew up in needed repairs they could not afford. I sent money when I could. Anonymously at first through my grandmother. Then directly, after Clarity Flow became profitable enough that I could afford generosity without sacrificing stability. I did not do it for recognition. I did it because despite everything, they were still my parents. And because helping them felt like proof that I had broken the cycle, that I was not going to become someone who withheld care just because care had been withheld from me. Sienna, as far as I knew, contributed nothing. She was too busy surviving her own chaos to consider anyone else's needs. I responded to her message 3 days later. I said I was willing to meet, but on my terms. In my city. At my office. She agreed immediately. Too immediately. That desperation was unmistakable. She arrived on a Friday afternoon. I watched her walk into the Clarity Flow lobby from my office window above. Same face, same height, same genetic material. But the years had changed us in ways that went deeper than appearance. Her clothes were expensive looking but worn, the kind of investment pieces that had seen better days. Her posture was different, less confident, more hunched. She looked around the lobby with an expression I recognized. It was the same expression I had worn years ago when walking into places where I felt I did not belong. My assistant brought her up. When she walked into my office, I saw something I had never seen on my sister's face before. Fear. Not of me. Of everything else. Fear of what she had become. Fear of what she had lost. Fear of the future stretching ahead with nothing solid to stand on. She sat across from me, and for a moment neither of us spoke. We just looked at each other. Twin sisters at 28, identical in structure but opposite in circumstance. "Elena," she finally said, her voice smaller than I remembered, "you look incredible." "Thank you," I replied. "What do you need, Sienna?" No small talk, no pretense of sisterly warmth. I had learned the hard way that Sienna used pleasantries as weapons. I was not going to give her ammunition. She took a breath. "I am in trouble. Real trouble. I lost my apartment. I have 3 credit cards maxed out. I cannot find stable work because my resume looks like a disaster. Michael took everything when we separated, and I did not fight it because I thought I would be fine. I thought I could figure it out." She paused, her eyes welling with tears that might have been genuine. "I thought I could figure anything out. I always did before. But now, I have nothing. And I saw your interview in that podcast. I saw what you built, and I thought..." "What did you think?" I asked quietly. She leaned forward. "I thought maybe we could work together. You could bring me on as a partner. I know people. I am good with people. I could handle the public relations side, the networking. We are twins, Elena. It would be such a great story. Sisters building something together." I let her words hang in the air between us. There it was. The ask I had known was coming since the moment I received her message. She did not want reconciliation. She did not want to apologize for stealing my application, my boyfriend, my identity. She wanted to take credit for what I had built, to insert herself into my success story, as if she had been there all along. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered, turning slightly away from Sienna. My mother's voice was thin with worry. "Elena, your father is in the hospital again. His heart. They are running tests. He keeps asking for both of you. He says he needs his girls together. He is scared, Elena. He thinks he might not have much time." I closed my eyes. Of course this would happen now. When I hung up, Sienna was watching me with an expression that mixed genuine concern with calculation. She had heard enough to understand. "We need to go," she said. "Both of us." I nodded slowly. "Yes, we do." But as I gathered my things and prepared to fly back to Tacoma for the first time in years, I made a decision. I was going to face my family. I was going to sit at my father's bedside. I was going to be present in a way I had avoided for 7 years. And when Sienna asked again for what she wanted, in front of our parents, in front of everyone, I was going to finally say everything I had been holding inside since I was 5 years old. The confrontation I had spent my entire life avoiding was coming. And this time, I was ready. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. I had forgotten how much I hated hospitals, how much they reminded me of all the nights my mother came home exhausted and sad, carrying the weight of other people's worst moments. My father looked smaller than I remembered. The man who had once seemed immovable, whose opinions had shaped my entire childhood, lay in a hospital bed with tubes and monitors surrounding him. His skin was gray. His breathing was labored. When he saw me walk through the door, his eyes filled with something I had rarely seen directed at me before. Recognition. Real recognition. "Elena," he whispered. "You came." "Of course I came," I said, moving to his bedside. I took his hand. It felt fragile, like holding paper. My mother sat in a chair nearby, her face lined with worry and sleepless nights. She looked at me with an expression that was complicated. Gratitude mixed with something else, something like shame. Sienna arrived 5 minutes after me. She had changed clothes on the plane, freshened her makeup, put on the mask she wore so well. But I could see the cracks now, the desperation underneath. My father looked at both of us together, his daughters, identical in appearance, opposite in everything else. "My girls," he said softly, "both of you here." For the next few hours, we existed in an uneasy peace. The doctors explained his condition. Another cardiac event. Serious but manageable if he made lifestyle changes and took his medications consistently. He was not dying, not immediately. But the warning was clear. That evening, after our mother went home to rest, Sienna and I sat alone in the hospital room while our father slept. The machines beeped quietly. The fluorescent lights hummed. "Have you thought about what I asked?" Sienna said finally, "about working together." I looked at her, really looked at her, beyond the face that matched mine, beyond the years of resentment, beyond everything she had taken and never returned. "Do you even know why you want it?" I asked. "Because I need it," she said. "Because I have nothing. Because you have everything and I—" She stopped, swallowed. "And I am afraid," she admitted. For the first time, maybe ever, she was being honest with me. "I am afraid of what I have become. I am afraid that without something to attach to, I will just disappear." I let the silence stretch between us. "You already disappeared," I said quietly. "Years ago, when you stopped building anything of your own and started taking from everyone else. You are a person-shaped collection of borrowed light, Sienna. And when the people you borrowed from stopped giving, you had nothing left." Her face crumbled, not the performative tears I had seen before. Real collapse, real pain. "I know," she whispered. "I know." My father's voice cut through the moment. We had not realized he was awake. "Elena," he said, his voice stronger than it had been all day, "be kind to your sister." The old reflex rose in me. The familiar pattern. "Elena, be patient. Elena, be understanding. Elena, sacrifice so Sienna does not have to." But I was not the same person who had accepted that role at 5 years old. I stood up slowly. I walked to his bedside. And I said something I had been holding inside for 23 years. "Dad, I love you, but I need you to hear something. My whole life you told us that twins should not compete, that we should reflect each other. But what you actually meant was that I should reflect her. I should diminish so she could shine. I should give so she could take. I should disappear so she could be seen." My voice was calm, clear, the voice of someone who had done years of therapy and built something from nothing and earned the right to speak. "You asked me once why I never came home. This is why. Because every time I came home, I was reminded that I was the less important daughter, the spare, the backup in case the real one did not work out." My father's face shifted. For the first time, I saw him actually hearing me. "Elena," he started, "I am not finished. I spent 7 years building a company that employs 23 people. I sent money to help pay for this house, for your medical bills, for things you never knew about because I did it through Grandma Lydia. I did not do it for recognition. I did it because I refused to become the person you raised me to be. I refused to be someone who withholds care just because care was withheld from her." I turned to Sienna. "And you? You want to be my partner? You want to share in what I built? Let me tell you what Clarity Flow cost. It cost 7 years of 18-hour days. It cost relationships I did not have time to maintain. It cost hundreds of rejections and failures and moments when I wanted to give up but could not, because giving up meant proving everyone right. It cost everything I had." Sienna opened her mouth, closed it. For once, she had nothing to say. I continued. I am not going to give you a partnership. I am not going to let you put your name on something you did not build. But I am also not going to leave you with nothing. Both of them stared at me. Clarity Flow has a professional development program, entry-level positions with training, mentorship, and psychological support. 6 months of learning how to build something instead of taking from others. A real salary, a real chance, but you have to earn it. You have to show up every day and do the work. You have to become someone who creates instead of someone who consumes. Sienna's eyes were wet. This was not what she had expected. I am offering you a beginning, Sienna, not my beginning, yours. And whether you take it or waste it is entirely up to you. The room was silent except for the beeping machines. My father spoke first. His voice cracked slightly. Elena. I did not know. I did not see. You did not want to see, I corrected gently. But I forgive you anyway, because holding on to resentment would hurt me more than it would hurt you. And I have spent too many years hurting already. I looked at my mother, who had returned and stood in the doorway, crying silently. I love this family, I said. But I love myself too. Finally. And I am not going to sacrifice one for the other anymore. 8 months later, Sienna completed the Clarity Flow development program. There was no ceremony, no celebration, no dramatic moment of redemption. Just a quiet Friday afternoon when she finished her final project and her supervisor marked her as ready for placement. She works in customer support now, entry-level, steady, unremarkable by any external measure. But I watched her during those 8 months. I saw her struggle with concepts that came easily to others. I saw her fail and try again. I saw her, for the first time in her life, do something without applause or attention or borrowed glory. She is not my partner. She is not my equal. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but she is becoming something she never was before. Someone who earns what she has. My father recovered. He calls me every Sunday now. Real calls, where he asks about my life and listens to the answers. It is awkward sometimes. 23 years of patterns do not disappear overnight, but we are trying. My mother sent me a letter last month. Actual paper, actual handwriting. She apologized for things I did not know she remembered. She said she was proud of me. She said she wished she had said it sooner. I framed that letter. It hangs in my office, next to the first $50 check from the bakery owner in Aurora. Proof that growth is possible. For everyone. Even the people who hurt you most. As for me, I am still building. Still creating. Still becoming someone new every day. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if Sienna will stay on the path she has started or fall back into old patterns. I do not know if my family will ever fully understand the damage they caused or the strength it took to survive it. But I know this. I am not a shadow anymore. I am not a spare. I am not the less important twin. I am Elena Porter. I built something from nothing, and I will keep building for as long as I live. This story, while dramatized, is inspired by the real experiences of countless individuals who have lived in the shadow of a sibling, constantly compared and chronically overlooked. Learning that your worth was never determined by who saw you, but by who you chose to become when no one was looking. These are not just stories. They are lessons in self-worth, resilience, and the courage to choose yourself when no one else does. Before you go, I want to ask you, have you ever been constantly compared to a sibling or someone close? How did that shape who you are today? And for those who felt invisible in their own families, what was the moment you decided to finally see yourself? If this story resonated with you, if you felt the pain, the struggle, and ultimately the liberation, write the word roots in the comments so I know you stayed until the end. And tell me, what city are you watching from? I would love to know where this message is reaching. If you found value in this story, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might change how you see yourself. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is still fighting to be seen. And do not forget to click on the next video in the cards above, because every story here carries a message worth hearing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, they made me believe I was the copy. Today I know I was always the original. and roots, once planted deep enough, can never be stolen.